I'm drawn towards the people who are leaders in technology that have this recognition that some of those kinds of problems that we talk about do not have a technology solution.
Welcome, friends, to the Digital Ministry Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Runyon, and the Digital Ministry Podcast is brought to you by Media Impact International. And this is a conversation where we talk to world leaders in technology and all things digital applied to ministry. Today, I'm with my friend Robert Rouse, who is the brains behind Viz.Bible. It's an amazing website. If you haven't checked it out and checked out some of the data visualizations on that site, I encourage you to do that. Maybe do that now and then come back and listen or watch the rest of this podcast. But Viz.Bible is an incredible website. And Robert, you got to start by telling us what in the world is a ministry of data or minister of data? What is that?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Nick, it's really great to see you again after a number of years. I remember when you were back in Dallas, and I've spent my time up there in Bozeman, so I know the area. I hope you're loving it, living back up there. Yeah, what is the Minister of Data?
You need to come visit. Let's put that on the calendar.
You bet. Yeah, it was a great place to be. Yeah, so maybe we're a little bit different than a lot of your other guests because I'm not in like full-time ministry in the sense that I don't work for a Christian organization. I don't work for any kind of church or nonprofit or parachurch organization. I'm a consultant in the corporate world, and Viz.Bible has been my side project for a long time now, over 10 years. And so, yeah, why did I change my title to Minister of Data? Well, how do I introduce myself on the website? Well, am I the creator of Viz.Bible? Am I, a CEO of a project and company of one person? Like, am I the founder of this thing where I'm the only person involved? Not really. But what am I doing? I'm serving others through what I do. And I sort of thought, well, we have these parliamentary positions where there's the Minister of Finance, there's the Minister of Defense, there's the Minister of Education. And what does that mean? That means they're serving a large body of people in this particular sector. And so I thought, well, what do I serve? Well, I serve up data. And to as many people as I can. And so, I thought that title was appropriate.
I love it. And that attitude of service is something that I think has just been something I've associated with you from the time we first met. I mean, the way that you've used kind of your skills in the marketplace to bring data visualization to the Bible, I think is incredible. And now on Viz.Bible, you've it's a combination of things that you've created and things that you've gathered from elsewhere. Yeah. Is that right?
Right.
So, like the cross-reference, the chart, I think it's been pretty widely seen as like that cross-reference visualization about how the Bible is different verses that are linked to one another. But tell me about some of the ones that you've created that are maybe, kind of, I don't want to say the most popular, but you've received like most feedback about, because I geek out on that website. I dive into all these. This is incredible. Yeah.
Well, so here's my thing is that I started off as creating this website for things that I could invent and design and wanted to share with the world. And it was just the stuff that I had made.
Mm-hmm.
And over the last year or so, it's changed a lot. Where now when you go to the homepage, it's now a gallery of not just things that I've made, but things that lots of people have made, things that have inspired me, things that I think are just really excellent work that I wanted to collect in one place that maybe could inspire others. So you talked about the cross-reference visualization. That's actually the thing that inspired me to get into the world of data to begin with. I used to be a project engineer, project manager on civil engineering projects, Air Force base maintenance and infrastructure type projects. So I was in the engineering world, and I got into the data world when I saw this cross-reference visualization that started with a guy named Chris Harrison. Very, very popular, and even recently, lots of big names, people like Jordan Peterson and big Bible teachers outside of that have reshared Chris Harrison's work from years and years ago. But it was something that was beautiful and intricate and data-driven that I've just thought, wow, we can apply these data concepts from the stuff that I'm learning in the corporate world to learning the Bible, to inspiring people. And that's really the thing, is that visual things, parts of the humanities, artwork, stories, media, these things inspire people in some way. It inspired me to get deeper into a data-driven career. And that's the kind of thing that I want to share with people. So the gallery now is not just stuff that I personally wanted to share, but stuff that I find brilliant and beautiful and excellent and hopefully inspiring to people.
Well, I've found it that way. Anybody who is the kind of person who grew up maybe, not paying attention to the sermon in church and spent all your time looking at the maps in the back like I did, you're going to love this website. And again, so I just encourage people to go check it out. I mean, I think some of the timelines, the references, some of the visualizations about sentiment, I think are really interesting. Yeah. And I've got 3 kids in high school, and so we're doing all the, like higher level math now, and some higher level science conversations. And, like the new telescope that was launched and has recently been brought online, and just some of these, like astrophysics, learnings that are starting to come out, with as technology advances, it gives us a better view of the world and the universe that we live in. And we've been having this conversation in our house about like science and faith don't stand in opposition to one another, that science is actually, confirming, enlightening, our view of the world from a biblical worldview. And I think that what you've put together on that site, kind of has that same impact. And
taking the world of data science into the world of Bible study. Yeah.
So for those that may not know, I mean, you're in the marketplace. Like you are a Tableau. What's it called? It's a Tableau master of some kind.
Originally, it was called Tableau Zen Master. They recently changed the name to Tableau Visionary.
Okay.
For people that have been leaders in that space. Yeah.
I mean, Tableau is this incredible business intelligence tool. I've used it in several companies that I've been a part of. And you are not only involved in, building that and using it, but training other people on how to visualize their data within their business. How should, even if you're not using Tableau, like what are some of the core, like the foundational principles with data visualization as it relates to kind of ministry goals that leaders should be thinking about?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. So it's definitely not about Tableau. It's not about one particular technology. You asked earlier about what have I found is popular? What do people resonate with that I put out on the website? And I think I heard you mention, the maps in the back of your Bible. So one of the things that we can do now is take those maps from the back of your Bible and make it into something that looks a lot more like a Google map, where you can zoom in and out and click around and have some interactivity. And that can be done with a number of different tools. I've done it in Tableau. I've done it in Mapbox for Paul's missionary journeys. And that actually today is by far the number one most popular application of data and technology that I've shared out there. So that's something where, we're taking data, we're taking latitude and longitude and timelines and point-to-point comparisons and overlaying it on top of the road networks from the ancient Roman Empire to show more details. All of that requires data skills. It requires the ability to take that geographic point analysis and put it into something that people can interact with, explore, find out more, and that sort of thing. So I would say it's less about a particular technology and more just about the understanding that taking that information from more of a linguistic context and into a data-driven context allows us to better make visual representations that inform and inspire and educate.
I've been having a conversation with several ministry leaders recently about results, impact, performance of their organization, and specifically like as it relates to kind of inspiring and soliciting donation from donors, helping people understand what's really happening and making that visible to them.
Yeah.
The thing that's, I think, interesting about your work is that there's a lot of maybe on the surface, like non-obvious relationships that exist in some of the data that you worked with. And I think that's true in kind of a ministry journey as well. There's kind of non-obvious connections between maybe felt needs and people that eventually end up in some kind of faith community. What are your thoughts on that? Like, where do we even begin to try to unravel that ball of twine?
It sounds like you're talking a little bit about church metrics or KPIs, or how well are we doing in our mission? How do we measure that?
But I think the tendency is to say, like, really in a hard, rigid way, like, okay, here's the number of people we reached, here's the number of people that came out of the bottom of the funnel. But there's kind of all of this interconnectivity in between that I don't think is obvious or being, kind of raised to the surface.
I can share from my corporate experience and trying to keep it intentionally vague is that there are things that organizations envision as sort of a funnel. There's an entry point, there's a few steps along the way, and then there's a conversion point. The fact is, it doesn't really work that way. You have an entry point into this funnel, but then you actually go somewhere else entirely. You go to a different ministry, a different website. You have a different experience, and then you come back, and then you get a little bit farther down in the process of conversations, or in that conversion funnel, so to speak. And then you jump out of the funnel and you discover more and you explore more. And it really is less like a funnel and more like just this big cycle where you're going back to the start and you're just running back and forth between this point and this ministry and this personal connection and that one. It's so much more messy than what we want to define into this stepwise process.
Mm-hmm. So should we even be thinking about efficiency, or should we think about something else, like facilitating the messiness?
I think understanding the messiness and being open to that, and I can't speak a lot to how that works in a nonprofit or a ministry context. I can speak a lot to how that works in a corporate context.
Mm-hmm.
And it just really comes down to what are your goals, and what is the appropriate way to get some visibility on that, with a strong realization that there are certain things that just aren't measurable. Personal interactions, personal communications, that's not a measurable experience, but it's deeply valuable, right? So we have to understand, here are the things that we're measuring, but there's a lot more than that.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So you've probably had, more experience in data gathering, building data sets, and visualizing that than anybody I know. And I've worked with a lot of different people, but, kind of in this space. But I think the scope and scale of what you worked on like far outweighs, my experience and those that I've worked with. So that gives you a kind of a unique insight into kind of what's around the corner a little bit, because one thing that I think everybody agrees on is technology is advancing so quickly, and some of these AI tools. I mean, I edited a video yesterday. I'd spent hours on it, and then I realized, hold on a second, there's probably a better tool for this. And I downloaded a new AI tool called Descript and edited it in 5 minutes. And it was, I cut like a 12-minute video down to, 4.5 minutes, which was what I was trying to do. I was like, how do I pull the story out of this? It was just incredible kind of how quickly and how good the output was. Yeah. So kind of in your world, or from your perspective, like, what's around the corner that we need to be thinking about? What do you see coming?
Oh, the perfect question, because I've got so many ideas, and we could talk for another 2 or 3 hours at least. AI is here now, and it is going to be ubiquitous on everybody's smartphones probably by the end of this year, and we just don't even realize yet the degree to which it's going to impact us. So from an industry leading kind of experience, I just went to a conference that's focused on this. How does data and AI play into the corporate experience of what do we use this for? How do we apply it to our data analysis? Because right now it's all focused on, we're building reports and dashboards, and we're just building all the charts and graphs to just monitor what's going on. But there's this visceral recognition that AI is the thing, but there's also recognitions of problems, right? It makes up information. It tries its best to sort of blindly collect everything it can possibly collect, and there's this trust issue that's underneath it all, and the people trying to solve that trust issue are saying, well, let's use AI to understand our language, to understand the conversation and augment that conversation, but then understand our intent, translate that into something that I can now send to a database of information. And that database is something that we already trust. Okay. Mm-hmm. So now, instead of AI coming up with the answers, the AI is just trying to understand your question. And the answers come from things that I already know and trust. LexisNexis actually talked about this at the conference that I was at. So I think about, how do we apply that to the Bible, and these chat interfaces that are just reading everything they can possibly read online and collecting it into an automated response. Well, what if it was just helping us to understand the question, and the answers come from something more directed, something more curated from the Christian community? The question that I like to ask is, who trains the bots? Right? Is that going to be a ministry organization that is feeding in biblical data, like the kind of data that I've been collecting over the years? Or is that just going to be whatever anybody else in the world says about the Bible? Those are things that I see on the horizon. Not even on the far horizon, but on the near horizon. It's coming faster than I think anybody really understands.
So who trains the bots?
People like me that feed in the data. Honestly, that's it. Right now, the bots are trained on whatever they can read online. But they can also be trained on knowledge graphs, on linked data, on the kinds of databases that help them understand context. So
what's that mean? What kinds of, are there contextual databases as like a standalone product, or do you kind of stitch different things together? Like, what's that mean?
Yeah. So when we talked about linked data, it says, okay, I've got this string of characters that says Saul. Okay. Simple word, right? Right now, AI can only see that text, right? Just the letters in that word. But who is Saul, right? Well, there's a couple of possibilities. It could be the king from the Old Testament, or it could be the person who changed his name to Paul later, right? And so, how does it know that, right? How does it know that Saul and Paul are the same person? How does it know that there are two distinct individuals that share the name Saul? Or Zechariah, for instance, there are like 27 Zechariahs in the Bible, right? So there's this need for a little bit of back and forth conversation. When I say, hey, tell me about Zechariah, it's got to come back and ask me the question, well, I found 27 of those. Which one do you mean? But how does it know that? It knows that because it has access to a data source of some kind that the technical term is disambiguation.
Okay.
But that gives unique identities to unique individuals. Same thing for unique places. Like there are two places named Antioch. Well,
Right.
which one? Right? Which one do you want me to tell you about? The back and forth thing and that contextual knowledge of identity and uniqueness has to be fed into it.
Well, I think what I hear you saying is that developers are starting to write in, not the assumption of understanding, but the need to like question the question, maybe.
Exactly.
To make sure we confirm context.
Exactly. Yep. To have that follow up. Yep.
That's something I need in my personal life. I always jump to the answer. It's like, well, no. I don't even understand the question yet. So,
yeah.
So, I think that people have really been wowed. And I heard an interview the other day. I think it was Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, interviewed by, I think it was on the Lex Fridman podcast that I was listening to. And he was like, ChatGPT-5 is going to just blow your mind, in the same way that GPT-4 came out and everybody was like, wow, GPT-3, is old news now.
Yeah.
It's kind of like these large leaps. Does that kind of track roughly with like a Moore's Law idea, or, do we limit out on that stuff at some point? Like, what are you seeing with kind of the advancement, the pace of advancement?
So I see two things with that. One is, what is an answer to your question, and one is the follow-up question. So the answer to your question is, are there these leap forwards? Yes, but, and the but is, right now what I see with the large language models is it's not really perfectly accurate to call it a brute force method, but still it kind of is. Let's just throw more parameters at it, more learning, more volume,
more data.
Yeah. Let's just keep scaling and adding more data, more parameters, more whatever. I think later on we're going to see more of a fragmentation of specialties, rather than the one large model that does everything. There will be specialized models. So that's one answer. But here's the answer to things that I think about when it comes to applying it to a ministry context. There's those things are really just magical and unbelievably magical at answering questions. They really are. But here's the question that I would ask is, where did the question come from in the first place?
This is.
What inspires people to ask new questions? What prompts them to be curious in the first place? What leads someone to start asking questions about God, about their faith, about understanding some part of the Bible? And that's where, this focus on better ways of giving them answers, I think is lacking, because, okay, that's certainly wonderful and fantastic that we can give people the answers that they're seeking. But I also want to be evangelistic in the sense of, let's prompt them to ask the question to begin with. And I think that's where the arts and humanities and storytelling and multimedia is the inspirational part of it, right? In the homepage of Viz.Bible, that I sort of make this case that images and artwork and stories and experiences, that's what leads people to want to ask the question in the first place. After that, and there's hundreds of wonderful technology solutions to help them find the answer.
Tell me about somebody who's kind of helping people ask the question in the first place, who's doing that well, that you've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, can be in the marketplace, doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Industry.
Well, I don't think that I can give you a direct example. I can only say, I can speak from personal experience in that what leads me to ask questions is just that I notice something somewhere. I see something that's like an anomaly, something that stands out for some reason. I'm like, that doesn't really align with what I think I already know. It doesn't really match with my experience. There's something unusual about that, and I just have this need to find out what that thing is. So the example from my experience and the Bible visualization that I talked about earlier with the cross references, there was this one just giant line in the middle, and I'm just like, why is that one so much bigger than all the rest? And so it took a little bit of investigation. I find out that Psalm 119, it's the longest psalm in the Bible. And then I learned about Psalm 119. I learned about the acrostic style of it and how it goes through all the Hebrew alphabet. But just that one like longer line in this visual thing that stood out somehow caused me to ask, why is that one different?
Mm-hmm.
And it's different than what I see everywhere else. So I think it's those things, either in a digital experience or even podcasting, like, oh, this podcast is really different than all the rest that I've listened to. That's intriguing. And I think it's that intrigue that leads people to investigate more.
You took that answer to a beautiful place. I was thinking much more like tactically. But I want to tie a couple of just thoughts together that I'm having right now as we're talking about this. Like you mentioned before, trust.
Yeah.
Trusting the models, like who's building the bots, who is putting the data into these language models. And I think that's something that's really key that people need to understand, is that every one of these tools, whether they're specialized models or whether they're, I might call it more generic, like a chat GPT, certainly more accessible, than some of all these specialized models.
Yeah.
But like they're all being trained by somebody with some kind of intent or purpose. And that's not always bad. It's like, I want to build a GPT that helps, peruse medical records quickly or something like that. Like, So the data that you put into it and the perspective that you bring, those fingerprints are going to be on that model whenever it's used by, doctors or whoever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important to understand. But that requires a lot of trust,
Yeah.
and what gets people to ask the question in the first place, what gets people to explore, questions about faith, spirituality, the Bible, that's a really interesting thought. And I think that, the arts and humanities, writing, sculpture, paintings, like in centuries past, we look at some of those classical type of like art pieces, or even architecture, where the cathedrals are built to like elevate our eyes and like bring our attention heavenward, and like how it's laid out is, a picture. Everything is symbolic. It's a picture of the cross, and how cities were designed. There's a lot of that kind of stuff in years past that was intended to bring our focus, to our Creator.
Mm-hmm.
Is that completely gone? I mean, I think you're helping to visualize some of that stuff, but what is it today that causes people to ask the question in the first place?
Yeah, I don't think that's completely gone. And I think you hit on something about directing our attention and what do we trust? Because ultimately, what people trust, what I trust, is the things that I see for myself, the conclusions that I draw on my own. Not the thing that somebody told me to believe, not this thing that somebody coerced me or persuaded me to believe, but something that I found and arrived at on my own. But I arrived at that after having directed my attention in a particular place. So you talked about the cathedrals that direct our attention upward. And right now, just the ubiquitous technology is not necessarily directing our attention towards godly things, towards biblical things, or just asking questions about God. It's directing our attention toward ourselves, our own lives, our own emotions and experiences. But the more that we're focused inwardly on our own selves, the more we lose sight of our Creator and Sustainer and our Lord. So I think there's really a big opportunity for us to help direct people's attention towards that. And what grabs attention? Well, it's something visual, or it's a compelling story, or it's an experience. And I'm really encouraged by the media organizations out there that are doing great things to direct people's attention in the entertainment world towards biblically focused stories.
What are some examples? What are you seeing that you appreciate?
Well, I think The Chosen, I think Revelation Media, I think the Bible Project. I can probably come up with a number of other examples, but people that are just doing a good job producing videos and media that are accessible to people, high quality, thought-provoking kinds of things.
Yeah, high production value. It's kind of bringing some. I mean, what I've heard from non-Christian friends is that like some of the stuff is actually pretty good. That didn't used to be the case. Like a lot of Christian stuff was kind of knocked for being hokey or like low production value, low budget.
But here's what I would suggest, and this is a big part of my vision for the future, is that I see two distinct worlds that could be connected together.
Isn't it?
Right. We've got this GPT and AI stuff, or even just thinking about years ago or today. People ask spiritual questions. They go to Google, they go to some search engine, or they go to an AI chat bot to ask the question and get their answers. Right. Okay. There's some conversation going on, some dialogue, and there's answers and questions and facts going back and forth. And then there's also this storytelling and arts and humanities. And I think that there's a big opportunity to connect those two things so that when I see that story and that story resonates with me, I want to follow up. I don't want the end of the video to be the end of my experience. I want to have something that says, okay, well, would you like to learn more? Here's where you can go to learn more. Here's my suggestion. It could be AI generated. It could be generated by some clever developer or database or just what have you that says, all right, you just watched a video about Jesus washing feet. Well, let me lead you to the text of the Bible. Let me lead you to some commentaries. Let me lead you into just some historical understanding of the time and place in which that occurred. The end of this video is not a dead end. It's an invitation to follow your curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that invitation can be driven by these AI technologies. It can be driven by curated, linked data.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to see much tighter merging of the storytelling and arts and humanities with the data and technology stuff.
Did you watch the Super Bowl this year?
I did.
So did you see the commercial by He Gets Us with the feet washing?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So I don't know if that's what you're alluding to, or maybe it just popped into mind, but that was
a
really
common story. I've seen that. Yeah, I mean, the commercial itself prompted that thought, but I've seen foot washing in local ministries as well as a way to reach out to homeless people, and so
yeah, right.
It's been kind of a common theme throughout Christian ministry, and that's just came to mind.
Yeah, no, I think it's an apt example actually, and I just wondered, but that was a really kind of polarizing ad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of conversation about it. And because of that conversation, I think that itself, that polarizing aspect, that generated conflict might have prompted people to say, well, gee, what does the Bible say?
Right?
Well,
I hope that's what it is.
How do we then take something like that and lead them into biblical resources and different points of view or deeper perspectives, deeper analysis of the source of that story to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm talking about connecting the media to the text, to the source, to give people more understanding, more opportunity to investigate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm being a little cheeky here, but I hope that it prompts, that question that you asked, which is, well, what does the Bible say about that, or where does that come from?
Right.
There was a whole lot of reaction from multiple camps,
Sure.
without asking another question. It was just shot fired,
But that's exactly the point, right? Media prompts the question.
Mm-hmm.
And technology can help us find answers. Now there's this human draw to find the answers that we already want to find as a confirmation bias. But I think anything that exposes us to the range of answers so that we can really be aware of, is this really coming from the Bible and what Jesus did and what Jesus told us, or is this also mixing in other ideas that maybe I'm not really aligned with?
So there's a video that I've seen online in different places a couple of times, and it's this classroom setting. It's shot from the back. It looks like a normal kind of college classroom, being live streamed or whatever. There's a professor up by the whiteboard, and this guy's kind of like agitated, and he's pacing and kind of ranting, and he drops a couple of keywords. He's like, when I was an intelligence officer, so it's like, okay, so this guy's like X 3-letter agency, something. And he goes, I met this Dr. Lawrence Royce, I think is what it is. It just popped up again this morning and I was annoyed by it. So I started doing like a deep dive. So this is why let me break here for a second. Where I'm going with this is trust and data and media prompting the question, and then really the need to like understand like the motive behind it and who's behind it and all this stuff. So all right, back to the story. So there's this guy, he's pacing on the whiteboard and he starts talking about like Dr. Lawrence Royce. Sounds like a real person. He talks about like the University of Kentucky in Louisville. Okay, so that's like another data point. And then he claims that this guy was working with the Russians after Chernobyl and he finds a cure for cancer. Have you seen this video?
No, okay. I haven't.
So I'm in some like dark holes on the web or something, maybe. I don't know. But like it's the thing, and there's these kids taking notes, and then the thing kind of like cuts off. There's no call to action. There's no, at least on the ones that I've seen, excuse me, there's no kind of implied sales pitch or whatever. But I'm like, I've seen this a couple of times. I've just ignored it. Yeah. So I started doing a Google search and I searched for Dr. Lawrence Royce. Well, like all this stuff comes up. There is, the first link is at Kentucky State University, but like I couldn't find, and it was just real quick on my phone. I couldn't find anything if that was real or not. But the whole thing is about gut health, which is kind of this, like if you alter your gut health, then you can beat cancer. Like it's a pretty wild claim. But it seems to me like this video was seeded out there to provide this really like long tail organic kind of search activity, like to kind of prompt this search activity around, you know, is it possible that I can take a vitamin and cure cancer? And maybe it is. Like, I don't know. I didn't do research that far, but it just, it made me think about, again, I saw it again this morning and I was annoyed by it. So I started doing all this research, but it ties into what you're saying, where the media like prompts the question. And I'm wondering if we're thinking deeply about like what questions we should be prompting and how to get people there. But at the same time, it needs to be, in a ministry context, it needs to be done in such a way to where trust and credibility is like paramount almost, because there's so many scams. And you know, it's like, was this whole classroom video just staged to try to get people to search for some like vitamin company in Thailand? You know, like we don't want to do that with
am I being manipulated somehow?
Right. I mean, that seems really sneaky if it's like this long conspiracy theory kind of thing. But I'm really intrigued by what you're saying about, you know, the use of media, the use of data visualization, understanding the relationships between kind of the messiness of conversation in order to kind of bring people to a place where they start to look outside of themselves and really ask, you know, what's all this about? Is there something bigger? Is there something I could search for? I mean, any reaction to that rambling and maybe how we can do that better as a church?
That's a tough one, and I'm drawn towards the people who are leaders in technology that have this recognition that some of those kinds of problems that we talk about do not have a technology solution. They have that's a personal and human problem. That is not something that we necessarily solve by building a better chatbot or building a better search engine or more accessible software. That is something that has to reach people on a human level. So we'll just have to recognize that. And I think as we get excited about new technologies and get just really fired up about all the new possibilities that are coming forward with large language models and all of that, and all the ministry opportunities that could afford us, let's still recognize that technology solutions are still not the ultimate solution. We still have to reach people on a personal and human level.
That's good. I hope that what I think I'm seeing among a younger generation is, I think the pendulum's swinging a bit.
Mm-hmm.
We got a generation of kids now that are raised by parents that are just in their phone all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like kind
Yeah.
of that desire to be known and loved by your parents is pretty hardwired into humans. At least I've seen, some kids rejecting that and defaulting back to like, I want a human relationship, a human connection.
Yeah.
It's a new world though, for sure. Robert, you've been generous with your time. You spent, I asked you if you had an hour or so today. I really appreciate the conversation. I want to thank you again for Viz.Bible and the stuff that you've put together. I know that when I was in ministry, just to give some people some ideas, like there's, and you didn't ask me to do this, so sorry if I'm, embarrassing you, but I would buy stuff from your shop, print it out, or it's printed out. I would buy those visualizations, frame it. They make great gifts for, friends, family. When I was hanging them in our office when I was with CV, and then also providing those as kind of gifts to ministry partners, donors, that kind of thing. And it's so unique and so lovely, the stuff that you've produced. I just really appreciate it. I've got the QR code. What's the name of it?
So it's the Trevor Woodham QR code. That's
Trinity.
Actually the one right here above my shoulder there.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's you.
So that's one that's not been really popular for people to buy in print, but I've had it on the back of my screen share for a long time now to prompt conversation because, hey, well, wait, is that a QR code in your on your screen? That is, and what is it? Well, it's a thing that's a code within a code within a code. That's a representation of the Trinity. If you stand way back and you're far away, it returns the text God. And if you get a little bit closer into these colored squares here, it's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So you get a little bit more information about the nature of God. And then if you get really, really close into the smaller squares, it actually gives you almost 100 Bible verses that describe different aspects of the Trinity or the Godhead. So it's a 3-layered code about 3 persons of the Trinity. It's a technical, data-driven kind of just art piece that takes a minute to appreciate, but I love talking about it.
I love talking about it too, because I had it hanging in my office when I had more office traffic. I don't now, but people would just sit there and, snap different codes and walk through the whole, it's so fun.
Cool. Yeah.
So keep up the good work, man. It's, and thanks for doing this. Thanks for being here, sharing your perspective today with me and with our audience. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Doug. It's great to see you again.